127.7 million people watched the last Super Bowl. That's the most watched TV event in American history. Americans are proud of that number. They should be. But there's another number, one that makes 127.7 million look like a rounding error. 5 billion. 5 billion people. That's how many humans watched the last World Cup. Not 5 billion Americans, not 5 billion sports fans. 5 billion people on one planet watching one sport. So the question is simple. Why does most of America have no idea this is happening? And how did the world's biggest sporting event become invisible to the world's biggest sports market? Let's find out. Let's put the numbers side by side. Super Bowl. Last year, 127.7 million viewers in the United States. Add international viewers, roughly 190 million total. That's incredible. For one game, one night, one sport. Now, the World Cup. Not one game, 104 games, spread across 39 days, 48 countries, every continent, 3 host countries, 16 cities. The final alone, 1.5 billion viewers. One single game, 1.5 billion. That's 12 times the Super Bowl. For the final only. The entire tournament? Over 5 billion cumulative views. To put that in perspective, there are 8 billion people on Earth. More than half of all humans alive watched some part of the World Cup. This is not a sports event. This is a planetary ritual, and most Americans have never tuned in. Here's the honest answer. Americans grew up with 4 sports: NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL. And these are great sports. The NFL is the most sophisticated sports league ever built. But here's the thing nobody says out loud. All 4 of those sports are basically only played in America. The rest of the world doesn't follow the NFL. They don't watch the NBA Finals the way Americans do. They don't know who won the World Series, and they don't care. America is big enough, rich enough, and loud enough to have its own sports universe. It never needed the rest of the world to validate it. Football, what Americans call soccer, is completely different. Football is the only sport on Earth that every single country plays. Rich countries, poor countries, countries with no paved roads, islands with 10,000 people, active war zones, all of them play football. There is no other sport like this. Not baseball, not basketball, not even the Olympics. Football is the common language of the human species, and America is one of the few places that never learned to speak it. Until now. Here's something most Americans don't know about the World Cup. Getting there is already harder than winning the Super Bowl. 211 countries enter qualifying. 211. They play for 3 years. Home games, road games, countries you've never heard of, altitude, heat, hostile stadiums, 90-minute flights to places with no hotels. After 3 years, only 48 teams make it. That's a 23% acceptance rate. Some countries have been trying to qualify for 50 years. They've never made it. When a small country qualifies for the first time, that's a national holiday. People leave work, schools close, the streets fill. Not because they won the World Cup, just because they got there. Imagine if 211 NFL teams existed, and after 3 years of games, only 48 could go to the Super Bowl. That's what qualifying is. The World Cup doesn't start in the summer. It starts 3 years before. This is the most common American complaint about football. The scores are too low. 1-0 is boring. 0-0 is unwatchable. Let me explain why that's wrong. Imagine 2 boxers, 12 rounds. Neither lands a knockout punch. Every round is tense, tactical, physical. Both fighters at their absolute limit. At the final bell, one judge's decision separates them. Is that boring? No, it's war. That's what a 0-0 football match can be. In American sports, scoring is constant. Every few minutes, points. In football, a goal is rare. And because it's rare, when it happens, the emotion is unlike anything in sports. 113,000 people, all of them screaming at exactly the same second. You can't manufacture that with constant scoring. The scarcity is the point. One goal, one eruption, one moment that changes everything. That's the addiction. Let's talk about what the World Cup actually means to people. Not in America, everywhere else. In Brazil, football is not a sport. It's national identity. It's how the country understands itself. When Brazil plays, 200 million people stop what they're doing. In 2014, Brazil hosted the World Cup. They lost 7-1 to Germany, at home. That number again, 7-1. People cried in the streets, not because they lost a game, because for 90 minutes, that team carries everything: the flag, the history, the national pride. Every Brazilian who ever kicked a ball. There's no American equivalent. The Super Bowl is a great party. Millions of Americans love it deeply, but it's still a party. The World Cup final, for billions of people, feels closer to a national exam. Now add this: when Germany plays France in the World Cup, it's not just a game. These two countries fought 2 world wars. Tens of millions of people died. Today, they play football. Same with England and Argentina. In 1982, they fought a real war over the Falkland Islands. 4 years later, Diego Maradona scored against England in the World Cup. He used his hand. He called it the hand of God. England called it cheating. Argentina called it justice. That goal is still debated today, 40 years later. Football carries history in a way American sports simply can't, because American sports don't play between countries with that kind of past. Now, 2026. This summer, the World Cup comes to the United States. 16 American cities, 48 teams, the biggest World Cup in history. And something interesting is already happening. Americans are starting to pay attention. The U.S. men's national team is actually good now. Not great, but good. Young players with experience at top European clubs. A fan base that didn't exist 20 years ago. A new generation of Americans who grew up watching Premier League on their phones, who played FIFA every day, who followed Messi and Ronaldo like their parents followed Jordan. The 2026 World Cup might be the moment America finally joins the rest of the planet. Not because Americans were told to care, but because the game showed up at their door. So, is the World Cup bigger than the Super Bowl? By the numbers, yes, it's not even close. 5 billion versus 190 million. 104 games versus 1. 3 years of qualifying versus a single season. But the real answer is more interesting than numbers. The Super Bowl is the biggest sports event in America. The World Cup is the biggest sports event on Earth. Those are two completely different things. America has its own universe, and it's a great universe. But outside that universe, 5 billion people are watching a game you're only now discovering. And this summer, it's coming to you. The question is whether you're ready. If you want to actually understand what you're watching, subscribe. The World Cup is in America this summer. You don't want to be the person asking, why didn't they just score more goals?